Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Social Work to Wealth podcast. I'm Taylor, and today we're going to be talking about the dreaded student loans. And I have a student loan expert here today to talk with us about all student loans and help us kind of figure out, just some tips on how we can manage our student loans. So, yeah, I have Lauryn Williams here from Student Loan Planner. It's a student loan consulting agency. Um, but I'll turn it over to Lauren to kind of introduce herself and explain a little bit more about what you guys do there.
Well, thank you, Taylor. I am so excited to be here to talk to you about this very, very sexy topic of student
I,
loans.
I
You,
wondered if you'd say something like that.
you know, it could be dreaded, but when you have clarity, you get to feel more confident. And okay, it's not a sexy topic, but like I said, clarity can be a thing that makes student loans not as bad as a little bit more palatable than we think they are. How about that?
Yeah, that's so true. I love that.
Yeah, so let me tell you a little bit about myself and about Student Loan Planner, and then we'll jump into the student loan stuff. So, I am a four-time Olympian turned financial planner. I was actually competing in sports, hired a financial planner, stunk at their job, fired them, hired another guy, thought that was going to go better. It didn't. All that to say that it is relevant because it is what led me to starting my own financial planning company, Life After Sport. And so when I started my own financial planning company, the first person who came to me who was not a family member or a friend, because that's how we all get started as entrepreneurs, was a young lady who had $365,000 of student loan debt and about $150,000 of income. And I was like, oh my goodness, what do? I don't know how to help her. Like all
Yeah.
these licenses and certifications and all this passion that I had about, being a certified financial planner and creating financial plans. And this was like the one aspect that like no one had taught me anything about. So I went down this rabbit hole to try to help her figure out her student loan situation and realize like, gosh, I have financial expertise and this is hard for me to understand. So how is this for someone who borrowed this money and has no financial expertise?
Hmm.
And so that's kind of where my love and my passion for student loans started to grow. Ran into Travis, who is the owner of Student Loan Planner, a year or two later, and he's like, "Gosh, I haven't met anybody who's as excited about student loans as I am. My business is doing really well. Would you want to come over here and do some work in the meantime while you're building your business?" And I said yes. And here we are. What I think 8 years later now, 2018 to now. Yeah.
Wow.
And so at Student Loan Planner, we do 60-minute consultations to help you figure out what is the right path for you based on your particular situation. Because the one thing that I want you guys to take away today is that no student loan plan it should be created alike the other. So don't do what your friend is doing. Don't do what your cousin did. Don't do what your colleague is doing. Do what is appropriate for you because you have a different family size, you have different life goals, you have different income, you live in a different state, you name it. There are so many different pieces of the puzzle that make your situation custom to what you are trying to accomplish versus what everybody else is doing with their particular situation.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. That's great advice. Oh, I've just student loans. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're here, Lauren. So I have lots of questions. And one of the questions is actually from our listeners. One of our listeners, Liv. But I'm gonna get to that later. So I think I just want to start off with kind of the general landscape of student loans now. Big beautiful bill passed and we're all worried about this plan, should I be on this plan, should I be on the wrap plan, should I, like, what do you feel like social workers should know about kind of the current repayment options?
Yes. So I'll start with, yeah, you're right. The OBBB, we're going to say. I don't know which, there's no easy way
I
to
know.
throw it in there, but it passed, and now we have some direction as to where we're going related to student loans. And that's put people in quite a tizzy. They're like, oh my goodness, nothing's been happening for so long. Now something's happening. But wait,
Right.
what is happening? So
Right.
that's what we're going to work through today. So the first thing is there's a large number of people that have been on SAVE. SAVE is an income driven repayment plan. And there was a court injunction for the SAVE plan because the two political parties are fighting. And so a lot of people, roughly 8 million, have gotten stuck on this SAVE plan while the two political parties have decided to battle it out. Which really hurts my heart to see that in America, we would let politics get in the middle of people's actual finances and their real lives. But that's for another day.
Right. So sorry, I wasn't on the SAVE plan. So, but I just want to get a little bit more clarification. So, while people were on the SAVE plan, they weren't needing to make payments, right? I feel like I've heard that.
Exactly. So they've not had to make payments either from June of last year or August of last year, depending on when they borrowed. If they have undergraduate debt, then they have not made a payment since June of last year. And if they have only grad school debt, they've not made a payment since August of last year on the SAVE plan. No interest has accrued at all. But they also have not earned any credit toward PSLF or toward their 20 or 25-year forgiveness. So you've just effectively been on pause for a whole year and not accomplished anything.
Gotcha.
So now what had happened was they are saying that as of August the 1st, interest is starting to accrue. So they did not actually end SAVE forbearance. You can stay on the forbearance. You can do nothing if you want to, but now you're going to watch your loan balance go up. And that's causing a lot of people to worry. That's causing a lot of people to take action, as it should. Hanging out and doing nothing sometimes feels like the right thing to do. You know, maybe you got some extra savings during this time. Maybe you pay down some credit card debt, but not working toward forgiveness is not something that's going to help you overall get closer
In the long term.
in the long term. Exactly. Yeah. So thing number one that has resulted as I don't really know it's because of the OBBB. I think it's all kind of like all being lumped together because it's all happening at the same time. But thing number one that we need to talk about is that if you're on SAVE, you probably need to get off SAVE.
Gotcha. And I feel like I've seen something where people are just going to get kicked off anyways, right?
Eventually you will get kicked off anyway. It will either be when the court finally figures it out, when the administration forces you to get out, or July of 2028 is the longest date that they have. They said between July of 2026 and 2028 is when they're going to implement all the new changes. So whichever of those three things comes first.
Okay.
Very broad, right?
So clear and helpful. Okay, so SAVE is ending, and what are the new options? What are you kind of like, advising people on what's next?
And that is the key piece of the puzzle. So SAVE is ending. What else do we have? The OBBB has made quite a few changes to the plans that will be available to you going forward. So one, income-based repayment. There's a new version and an old version of it. Those are the two plans that are sticking around that look really stable, that we can kind of count on for the foreseeable future. They have been around pre-OBBB, but they are pretty much the only ones that will stick around post-OBBB.
And what are those ones?
That's the new income-based repayment and the regular income-based repayment. So,
okay.
Just to clarify, we're going to do a little bit of alphabet soup here.
Yes, please.
It might not clarify, but income-driven repayment, IDR, is the name of the whole program. And then underneath the umbrella of IDR, you can choose IBR, PAYE, SAVE, ICR, or new IBR. So all of those are different income-driven plans that you can choose from. The two that I was just talking about, income-based repayment, IBR, are the two that are sticking around for sure. Then there is pay-as-you-earn, PAYE. If you borrowed exclusively after October 1st of 2007, you are eligible for that program. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're on it. You can still get on it right now, but it is going away as a part of the OBBB. And so you need to plan to make changes if that's the plan you're on right now. The one other plan that is going away besides the SAVE plan is the ICR, which stands for Income Contingent Repayment. I told you, it's some alphabet soup.
I feel like they make it all confusing on purpose, but hey,
Right.
That's a
It all
conversation for
sounds the
another
same.
day.
Right. So just beware. ICR going away. PAYE going away. SAVE going away. What does that leave us with? IBR new, IBR old, and the new wrap plan that you mentioned.
Oh, income-based repayment plan old, income-based repayment plan new, and the wrap plan, which is also new.
Right. And the wrap is so new that it doesn't actually exist. So you couldn't, listen to this podcast today and go online, as of this recording and choose the wrap plan. They said that they plan to implement it by July of 2026. So we will see. So we have some details about it, but you can't actively choose it as of yet.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Wow. So I'd like to go in a little bit about with the income-based repayment plans, both of those. Can you kind of talk a little bit about what those look like, what those mean?
Absolutely. Especially, like I said, people are leaving safe. People are looking for options in general. Like you said, they're listening. They've had their head in the sand, ignoring their student loans. Today is the day to get out, get into action. And so when we choose the new IBR plan, it is because you borrowed exclusively after July 1st of 2014. If you had any loans before July 1st of 2014, you are not eligible for new IBR. You are only eligible for the old IBR.
Okay.
So the old is the one that's going to be all encompassing, the catch-all for everybody. And it is less advantageous than the new. So fingers crossed that you are eligible for the new. But the world doesn't end if you're only eligible for the old. You just need to do the math and understand, how it affects you. So let me explain. The new IBR is a 20-year plan, and it is based on 10% of your adjusted gross income, whereas the old IBR is a 25-year plan, and it is based on 15% of your adjusted gross income.
Okay.
So old IBR, not as advantageous because you pay for 5 years longer and you pay 5% more on a monthly basis. If we're going to be on these income driven plans or income-based repayment plans, the whole point of being on one is to get forgiveness. Otherwise, you should be aggressive and be thinking about how to pay your loans off as quickly as you can. So we want to be in one side of the boat or the other. We're paying them off aggressively, trying to save as much money on interest as possible, or we're choosing one of these income-based plans and we're paying as little as humanly possible, not $1 extra toward our loans, because we're trying to maximize the amount of forgiveness that we're going to get.
Ooh, that's interesting. I want to come back to that. Can you explain? So the new IBR plan sounds like are we happy about this? That sounds good. Sounds better, right?
It's nice. It's just hard because not everybody qualifies for it.
Yeah.
So, like, what year did you go to school?
I graduated, let me think. I was in school from 2011 to like 2018.
Exactly. So you borrowed before July 1st of 2014. You can't get on the new IBR plan even if you wanted to.
I think the loans that I have, because my first 3 years of undergrad was community college, and my mother so graciously, thank you, Mom, was able to pay out of pocket for my community college, and then 2014, I started fall of 2014, I believe, and I had to take out loans. So what's the date?
July 1st of 2014. So you probably made it.
I might have made it. I'll have to look. That's kind of nuts. Interesting.
Yeah. So you would be able to pay based on over a period of 20 years, 10% of your income, whatever is left over at the end of that time frame would be forgiven.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, for some people who qualify, that is great. It's less amount of your income for a shorter period of time. We love that. The RAP plan, which stands for what?
Repayment Assistance Program.
Okay. Can you explain what you know about it so far? I realize that there's not a lot of information about it, but what do you have?
Yeah, so it is also based on your income. What they do is they do 1% of your adjusted gross income for every $10,000 that you make. So basically, if you make between 10 and 20,000, you pay 1%. Between 20 and 30,000, 2%, and so on and so forth.
Of each of those brackets of your income?
Exactly. So if you make $120,000 a year, you're going to have 10% of that number. So that is $12,000.
Hmm.
Divided by the 12 months in the year, $1,000 a month. So if you make $120,000 a year, easy to calculate your payment. It's $1,000 a month, which I don't know if people are going to think that's a good number or a bad number, but that's how they calculate it. Um, and so that's the thing you need to be thinking about with the WRAP plan. The other thing that is important to know about it is that it's a 30-year plan.
Oh
So
God.
I know, right?
And
So just
that's
our
and that's when you get forgiveness after 30 years?
after 30 years. And we're unclear on whether or not it's going to be like tax free or taxable. We probably, like I said, it should work just like the others and be taxable at the end. But
When you say
yeah,
it's taxable or tax the other ones when you get forgiveness on the kind of 20-year plans or more, it's not taxed or it
nope,
is.
all of them are taxable.
Okay.
And so that is a key piece of the puzzle for everyone as well, because so many people listening to this podcast are like, oh, my payment's $100 a month. I can afford it, whatever. Well, if your payment is that low, it's because you're on an income driven plan. You're going for forgiveness, and you might not realize that once the loans are forgiven, you need to pay taxes on the amount that they forgive. So you might have borrowed $75,000. By the time you get to 20 years from now, your loan balance is going to be $125,000 because of interest and because your payment was so low based on what your income was. So the good news is that your payment was always affordable because they calculated it based on your income. But the thing you didn't know was that you weren't paying enough to even cover the interest. So it was piling up on you. Your loan
And then
balance
when
is
it's
bigger.
forgiveness, and then when you get it forgiven, they're like, here's, I don't know, how much, what's the percent, like what, how do they tax it? I guess it depends on where
As
you
a
live.
normal income. So like in my example, you get 125,000 forgiven. It's going to look on your tax return like you made an extra $125,000 that year. And so you need to be able to do the math to say like, what is my tax liability going to look like? And also, how much do I need to save on a monthly basis to be ready for that tax liability? And that's what we do at Student Loan Planner is help people figure out those kind of things. Because when I tell you it's on almost nobody's radar, people aren't thinking about this. People don't have $500 in the bank for an emergency. So they're definitely not thinking about a tax bomb.
No, and that's I feel like that's not even really talked about when we're talking about forgiveness or even on I don't know, it's just like, "Oh, I'm going to get them forgiven." You know, like there's no messaging or just I don't know, making sure
Mm.
people are prepared on that end and
I'd say the one thing, because your audience is social workers, like you guys frequently qualify for public service loan forgiveness, which is a
yes.
different type of forgiveness.
Let's talk about that.
Yes, and that one is tax free. So that's the first thing we'll say about it.
Okay. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Okay, so for people who aren't familiar with public service loan forgiveness, can you give us your spiel for that?
Absolutely. So, four requirements. The first one is that you have direct loans, which if you borrowed after 2010, you definitely do. But if you borrow before 2010, there's a possibility you have something called FFEL loans. You need to look at your loan profile and see. But the requirement for PSLF is that your loans are direct. Second requirement is that you work at a nonprofit agency or a government agency, like I said, which is very popular in the world of social work.
Right.
So that's usually a pretty easy one to do.
Mm.
Any government agency, any 501c3 qualifies. Third requirement is that you're on an income driven repayment plan. So that's what we spent some time already talking about. All that alphabet soup that I gave you earlier, you have to choose one of those plans. And while they are 20 or 25 or even 30-year plans, if we're talking about WRAP, you would only do it for 10 years. So that's the fourth requirement is that you make 120 qualifying payments. And once you've made 120, which is the equivalent of 10 years, then your loans are forgiven tax free.
That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
What do you feel like? Are there any big misconceptions people have about PSLF or things that people really get like hung up on that you're often finding that are confusing?
100%. So with public service loan forgiveness, there's a lot of clickbaity articles out there saying that the forgiveness is not real. What had happened was, once again, in 2007, the program was born, and they didn't really do a good job of advertising how it worked. They didn't have a sign-up process initially when they rolled it out. And so people were just working at places thinking like they were going to get the forgiveness, not realizing that there were criteria. So imagine 2007, I just mentioned, if your loans are after 2010, you definitely have direct loans. 2007, you could have still had those FFVL loans. That was no fault of yours, but you would have had to known to consolidate those loans and turn them into direct loans. If no one told you that, what did you do? You kicked your feet up. You worked at your nonprofit organization. 2017 rolled around and you're like, hey, I'm ready for forgiveness. And they're like, but you don't qualify. And you're like, wait, what? Like, I work at a nonprofit. Like, what do you mean? And it's because you did not have direct loans. So I think some of the misnomers around PSLF is that the success rates were really low to start out because people didn't understand the criteria, which, like I said, was partly people not looking into what the criteria was, but mainly it was their Department of Education not communicating very well. And so during the course of COVID, President Biden rolled out a PSLF waiver and tried to right that wrong and say, hey, if you are PSLF qualified, we're going to, overlook some of the criteria to help you get your forgiveness. And that helped a lot more people get it. So it is a real program. You can get forgiveness. You need to meet the criteria, and no, it is not going away. So those are my little piece of the puzzle related to PSLF.
I love that you said that last part. No, it's not going away. So now I'm going to get into Liv sent me a question. And she said, is it better to pay off my, and I recognize that we only have a small piece of the puzzle and you can't completely fix our whole situation, but we're going to try.
You need a consultation, Liz. That's what she's trying to tell you.
Liv does need a consultation for sure, which the link will be in the show notes, guys. I highly recommend working with Student Loan Planner. I did, and I think what Lauren said earlier, like in the beginning of just, yes, they're dreaded, but when you have clarity and confidence about your plan, I mean, the relief that you can have with all of this is I mean, can't put a price tag on that. So anyways, Liv says, is it better to pay off my loan in full or try for PSLF? I'm scared it will get canceled.
Liz, it is Liv,
Liv, L-I-V.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. Liv, I think you should continue to pursue public service loan forgiveness. It sounds like you're a ways into it.
She says sorry, let me see. She said, I just started making payments last month. I would be paying around half over the course of 10 years if PSLF pulls through in 10 years and forgives the rest. Right now she has $50,000 of student loans and she makes $60,000, has no state income tax in Tennessee.
All right. So, I mean, she's already told us she knows that she would pay literally 50% of what she borrowed over the course of 10 years. That sounds like a really good deal to me. Mm-hmm. It's usually more like what we feel like our education is worth when you pursue the PSLF route. So if I could pay $25,000 over 10 years instead of $50,000 over 10 years, that's $25,000 that I can put toward my retirement, put toward my kids' education, home down payment, my financial stability and other aspects of life. And so public service loan forgiveness makes a lot of sense. And I don't think that they're going to pull the rug from underneath you, Liv. I think that it is safe to pursue. Like, you're already working at a PSLF employer. There's not really a way for them to back out and say, like, okay, you're 7 years in, now you got to pay your loans back in full.
I was going to say, can we talk a little bit about this? Like, I feel like a lot of us, especially in social work, and just we're seeing the impact of this administration and how it's impacting the communities that we work with directly. Like, we are really seeing it. And so I think we have this fear that this could be something that can be overturned. And so I don't know. I mean, yeah,
it's hard to have faith in our government right now. That's just the reality.
right.
With all the different things that have happened, we've seen, like you said, the rug pull from under people in various ways, whether it be their work, their employment, resources for programming. And it is really hard right now to have faith in our government, but there are things that are written into statute, and there are things that are executive order. And I think that's the big difference. Like, PSLF is something that is in statute. It wasn't something that was just like made up. And so you actually have a lot has to be done to undo PSLF, despite the various talks and the things that they come up with. And so I think our worst case scenario is that something new comes out, which they're not even talking about right now. And it would be like, if you borrow, after July of 2028, as an example, just making up a date, then you're not eligible for PSLF. So it'd be like, well, before you borrow anything or you go to school, you'll know that that's off the table. But the people who are already on it would be grandfathered into it.
Yeah. Okay. That makes me feel good. And of course, I know you're like, I can't tell the future, but like from what you know and from what you've seen, you're the expert here, and I trust that.
I feel
Um,
confident that Liv should pursue PSLF. Don't pay those loans off in full. I mean, the other thing to think about, Liv, is like, hey, how fast can I pay them off? Can you pay them off in 2 or 3 years? And what is it going to take? How much more are you going to be putting towards the loans? You're going to pay the full 50,000 plus interest. And I just made up 3 years, assuming that you're gonna just like eat beans and rice and like get really aggressive. But that's 3 years you're not putting money toward retirement, probably. You're maybe living with a roommate because 60,000 only goes so far in any part of America nowadays. So it's gonna be a
yeah,
tough swing to pay off 50 grand when you earn 60, and of course
yeah,
they're taking taxes out of that.
hmm yeah. Thank you for that, Liv. I hope that helps.
Mm.
Um, so social workers, I coming talking about salaries, Liv just said she's making $60,000. Girl probably has a master's degree. It's ridiculous. But
It's
again,
sad.
conversation for another day. Social workers who are coming out of the field and they have low salaries, how do you see people tackle their loans when they have a high balance? Um, but we're making, coming out of grad school, I'm making 60,000, but maybe I have more than Liv and say I have 100,000, 150,000, 300,000. Like, how should we be thinking about our loans when we're coming out of grad school?
Absolutely. So the thing about these income driven plans is that they are tied to your income. So you should always have a payment that is semi affordable. It's getting harder and harder nowadays. So I mentioned the old IBR plan being more expensive than the new one. Imagine paying 5% more on a monthly basis than you were. Sometimes that is the number that breaks people,
That's a
and
lot.
that's the only one that's there, the only plan that's available. So but the idea on these income driven plans is that that monthly payment is affordable, despite how much you owe. It's based on how much you earn, and it should be something that you should be able to swing. If that's not the case, then I mean, you have to figure out like what other options you have. I mean, that's really something more like forbearance. But it's tough right now if you can't swing that monthly payment. But if you can swing the monthly payment, then it doesn't really matter if it's 100,000 of student loan debt or 300,000 of student loan debt. The payment is the same based on what you earn, and I think that's the thing that gets missing sometimes. Is people get really stressed out because their loan balance is so high, but it's really more about what you earn. And this is not me discouraging you from earning money. Earning money is good. That's going to help us reach our other goals. So the more you earn, the more you'll have for your other goals. But it is also true that the more you earn, the more you will pay towards your student loan because it is an income based repayment plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you had mentioned earlier, can you talk a little bit more about like when you're supporting people, you're like, okay, are we going towards forgiveness or are we going towards, or are we paying it off? And
Mhm.
what are some things that you're helping people kind of walking people through with like with that? So can you kind of
Yeah.
explain that a little bit?
So generally, once you start to earn the same amount you owe, you want to take a really close look and see if forgiveness is going to be
Mm.
relevant to you. Because that's when it starts to flip, and it usually makes more sense to pay your loans back. I'll put an asterisk by that because we just talked about Liv, who earns 60 and owes 50. When you're
That's
going
she's
for
close.
Right, she's close. She earns a little bit more than she owes.
Yeah.
But when you go for PSLF, it pretty much always makes sense because the timeline is so much shorter. If you're going to be stretching this out over the 25 or 30 years across these different plans, and you earn more than you owe, it generally does not result in you getting forgiveness. And so, therefore, you need to look at one of those quicker payback options. And like I said, just trying to get it off your plate as quickly as possible. And so that's kind of the litmus test. Do you earn more than you owe? And how long have you been earning more than you owe is another piece. And then also, do you qualify for public service before you jump over into the aggressive payoff bucket?
Hmm. Interesting. Okay. Thank you for that. I'd like to talk about forbearance and deferment and again, words that we kind of know about, but we're not really sure. Can you explain both of those, please?
Absolutely. So both of them, by definition, are you not paying on your loans, but usually for two different reasons. So forbearance is like, I can't pay on my loans. I don't want to pay on my loans, and so could you please put a pause on it for that? Whereas deferment comes with like I am in school, and so in school deferment. You do not pay on your loans. That's like a mandatory type of deferment that you have for what you're currently borrowing for. Then
Mhm.
there's also like a military deferment. Like I am being deployed, therefore I can't focus on this right now. I'm trying to save the country. And so like deferment comes with a reason. I have a hardship of some sort, a financial hardship. They would let you defer your loans sometimes in that case. So deferment is you not paying on the loans. Interest does accrue. Usually on your subsidized loans, interest does not accrue, but on your unsubsidized loans, it would accrue. And on forbearance, it would accrue for all of them. So they are both you not paying on your loans, but it's like for different reasons. With forbearance, you get 3 years of it in the federal system. So there's 3 years that you could just like put them on pause, ignore, and not have to pay
Just be like,
regardless.
hey, I can't do this right now.
I don't want to.
I don't
Right.
want to.
Right.
Interesting. I should look into that. No, I'm kidding.
No, you shouldn't. And you
I'm
would be
kidding.
surprised the number
I'm
of
kidding.
people who are just like, I just forbear because I just didn't want to deal with it.
I just don't want to think about it. Yeah,
Mm-mm.
which I feel like we as social workers know that just putting something on the shelf and not addressing it is not healthy for us, but sometimes we use it as a coping mechanism, but let's bring it back. Let's bring it back and book
You can
book a
do this.
consult with
You can
Lauren.
do this.
We
You
can
can
do
do
this.
this.
um so briefly, I feel like I'm just hitting you with like these definitions. Like, please explain this. Please explain this.
We got to break it down for the audience, right?
Yes, unsubsidized versus subsidized.
Yes. Subsidized is going to be loans that, like I said, do not accrue interest while you're in school. And then if you're out of school and you're on, like I said, a deferment, they would also not accrue interest while you're in that deferment. Unsubsidized means they will accrue interest. So you get out of school and your loan balance, like you borrowed 50 grand as an example, your loan balance is already 55 because while you were in school, not paying on the loans, the interest started to pile up on you. So you exit school already owing more than you borrowed because you didn't pay on them. And then, like I said, by definition, you have to be in deferment when you're in school. It's called in school deferment. So,
hmm I feel like when I got my student loans, it was like some of them were subsidized, some of them were unsubsidized. Like it just randomly happens. I don't,
mhm.
how does that work?
Yeah, some of it is financial aid. Some of it is, like you said, what your FAFSA says. Then there's also these plus loans, like I said, where you could just take out like unlimited amounts of money. And those actually don't even have to stay in this in school deferment I'm talking about. So sometimes people are like putting those in forbearance or they're paying on those loans while they're in school. It's just like a little bit of a hodgepodge. That's why I said no two student loan plans are the same. No matter how similar you and your friend are, you guys are not gonna have the same plan because for these reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there a time when you would recommend like forbearance? Because it sounds like the deferment you have to, like you said, prove like I'm being deployed or I have this financial
Hardship.
hardship. Maybe let's talk about that one a little bit. Like if people are like whatever their payment is, whatever the plan they're on, they're just like I literally cannot afford this. Do we defer? Do we go on forbearance? How do you like
It depends.
yeah.
Yeah, you really got to look at your situation and see like why you can't afford it because the other thing we didn't talk about is that on these income driven repayment plans, you could have a payment of zero and be on the payment plan.
Hmm.
So, let's say you make $15,000 a year. You're working part-time doing social work because I don't know, you just
You
had a
have
baby.
kids
Yeah.
and yeah. You got a spouse and they're bringing in most of the income, but yeah, you're still working a little bit.
Exactly. That's a perfect way to say like 15,000 is not enough to pay on my 150,000 of student loan debt. You sign up for the income driven plan. They ask you what your family size is, they ask you what your income is, and they assign you a payment of zero. So now you're on income based repayment or new income based or pay, the options that we've discussed today. But your actual payment is zero. You're not in forbearance, you're not in deferment, and now you're earning credit toward that 20 or 25 years toward forgiveness.
Right.
So you don't always need to choose a forbearance or deferment, and frequently you don't need to choose one. Now, flip side, the question was like, when would I choose that? Like maybe you make $120,000 a year, and I actually talked to someone recently. Their mother was really sick, and so they've been flying back and forth. They've been spending a lot on that. They also have a child with special needs, in addition to living in a high cost of living like New York City, city. So like while 120 sounds like a lot of income, with those three things going on, and just the regular aspects of life, that person was living kind of very paycheck to paycheck. And so if they went to sign up for an income driven plan, the income driven plan is going to say, nope, you can't do it. Um, Here's your payment of $1,000 as an example, and she's like, I can't add another $1,000 to the mix right now.
Yeah.
That's someone who would need to choose a forbearance or deferment.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, how would she decide?
But it just depends. Like, yeah, if she has the hardship deferment she could ask for, or she could ask
Oh, because
for
you have to like prove it with
provide.
documents and things like
Exactly.
that,
Or you can
right?
literally just like log into your servicer and be like, nope, not paying general
I want
forbearance, and
forbearance.
move on with your life. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. And I think you said this already. You get 3 years total of deferment or forbearance.
Forbearance.
Okay,
Deferment is like as they say. Yeah.
as needed, or yeah,
Mhm.
as they grant it to you. Um, let's talk about refinancing and yeah, your tips for people on refinancing or not.
Yeah, we are entering a season where refinancing is once again becoming more popular. Pretty much during
Oh.
COVID, 90% of people were advised not to refinance.
Well, yeah,
Um,
because I feel like we didn't have to pay on our loans and it was getting counted, right?
it was getting right. You didn't have to pay on your loans. It was getting counted. There was an interest-free time frame, but also like just all the different things that were rolled out. The IDR waiver was helping people get closer to forgiveness faster. Pre-COVID, I'd say 70% of people. This is me making up a number, but had to go for forgiveness and 30% maybe refinance. During COVID, it was like 90% should go for forgiveness or at least stay in the federal system,
Hmm.
and then 10%. And now we're going back to, because the payment plans are changing, a lot more people are only going to have income based repayment available to them. We're headed back to the days where 70% of the people should be going for forgiveness, and now there's a much bigger number, 30%, that should be going to refinance. Um, because after 25 years and after paying 15% of your income, there's not going to be anything left. And so it makes more sense to get a better interest rate, which you can't do in the federal system. So that's the reason that you would refinance. You can't negotiate with the federal government your interest rate. That's what you do with a private company. Hey, I have 7% with the federal government. I'd like 5%. I've got good credit. And you go off and you pay your loans based on 5% of income. I mean, 5% interest. Um,
Wow.
mhm.
Wait, we can negotiate with these loan people, with these loan companies,
Negotiate is a strong word. Like, you put in your information, they look at your credit score and your income, and then they give
and
you an
then they
interest
give you
rate.
an interest rate. Okay,
Yes.
I can't come back and be like, oh, that's cute, but like this is what I want.
But
Can I?
you can, yeah, so you can call these companies and say, like, I don't think you
Okay.
took my full situation into consideration. I'm a really good borrower. I am. I mean, this is we're on a social work podcast, but like, I'm a physician, and it looks I look broke on paper, but I'm not actually broke. Like, more sort, yeah. So that is an option. It doesn't generally work, everything is AI and formulas now, but closed mouths don't get fed. So if you don't call and ask, you definitely don't get a better rate than what they are offering you. But the other thing too is that you're not loyal to a company. You're loyal to whoever's going to give you the best interest rate. So instead of spending your time
Period.
calling them and arguing about it, like, I would go through the 5 different companies, most popular, and see who has the best interest rate there, and know that like that's it. Like, there's not really a reason to argue with anyone, because if this gave me 4.8, this one gave me 4.3, 4.2, and 4.1, it's just like I'm probably not going to find better than 4.1, even
Mm-hmm.
by arguing with someone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Um, I had someone who, excuse me, I had someone who reached out and said, "How do you hold student loan serve student loan servicers accountable for illegally overcharging, false credit reporting. They had they had reported her as having missed payments.
Mm. This is a tough one. It is really hard to hold them accountable, which has been one of the biggest problems in the system. That we have very little rights as borrowers. They say that you have rights, they give you these options and these things to do, and then they just kind of like ignore you. So the two things that this person can do is go to studentaid.gov/feedback and file a complaint there. And then the second place is to go to CFPB and file a complaint there. The problem with the CFPB is it's one of the things that was dismantled as a result of the new administration.
Oh Lord.
I know.
My
And so
gosh.
I
Oh
was
yeah,
seeing the
that's
most.
the center. That's the center for like consumer. What
Yes.
is it? What is it? Yeah.
CB. Right.
CFPB. I have to look it up. I have the Consumer
Consumer
Financial
Finance.
Protection
There
Bureau.
we go.
The bureau that is trying to protect us as consumers in this financial landscape has been dismantled.
So there's
Love that for
that.
us.
Right.
Love that for us.
And they were actually doing their job. So
They
let's
were
just.
they were killing it. I did
Hmm.
listen to a podcast of a guy who worked there. Yeah, and I was impressed. Anyways.
Yeah, that's what this person could have done was go to someone like them and say like, "Hey, here is what has happened. This is not right. This is unfair." And they would get them to move to action. A lot less true with studentaid.gov. It's like, "We've received your response and we don't really care. Bye." Like the number of.
Because no one's holding them accountable,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, like sometimes the responses are literally incoherent. It's like I asked you what day of the week it is, and you wrote back and you told me the recipe for spaghetti. Like, and you're just like, this literally has nothing to do with what my inquiry was. Like, they're just required to respond. Like, it's so sad.
Oh my gosh, I'm laughing because
To
if
keep from
not, I will
crying.
cry. Exactly, you get it. Um, wow, okay. This was awesome, and I need to have you on the podcast like every year just so we can just get some updates, get the tea, get the student loan tea. Um, I just want to talk like end with the process of if someone wants to work with student loan planner, what's that process look like? Like give us the inside scoop of all the things that you need from the person that wants to work with you and what you provide to them.
Absolutely. So you can use the link in the show notes. You book a call. Pretty much, you'll receive an automated response that says, "Hey, we need your TXT file," which is a document you can get from studentaid.gov. You send that on over to the person that's going to be your consultant. So we'll have that ahead of the meeting to be able to look at, and then we'll also convert it into something slightly prettier than than what you see. Everybody's like, "This document is ugly. Like, what are you gonna do with it?" Don't worry, we've got a magic tool to make it look better. But it's like your credit report for student loans. So we walk through that document first, and then we move over to looking at a calculator. That's going to tell us which of all these different, payment plans, all this alphabet soup that we talked about today is the most appropriate for you. And I think it's a lot easier to understand those payment programs when you have a visual in front of you that's saying, like, okay, if you choose this, your payment's going to be this, and your payment's going to be this on the other plan, and it's going to cost you this much over time, and this is how much is forgiven. So, like I
Yes.
said,
And
we walk you step by step through what is appropriate for you.
yes, and I have gotten a consult specifically here with Lauren. I have seen this spreadsheet. It is gorgeous and I feel like people call me the spreadsheet queen. And I could not touch this amazingness. Like this spreadsheet is so awesome and detailed and tailored. Yeah, just for you.
Yeah.
So hour consult, hour and a half.
Hour consult, 60-minute consultation, and then you also get 3 months of email support. So we don't just abandon you after the call. If you have additional questions that come up, we try to get those answered for you as you're implementing, the plan that we made during that consultation.
Awesome. Anything else you feel like we need to
Um,
know?
I think, as a closing thing, I would say, like I said, don't stick your head in the sand. You're here, you're listening to this podcast, which means you're taking some sort of action towards your finances.
Hmm.
I know student loans can be scary. I know they're not sexy, even though I said they were. But not doing anything could be costing you tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars.
That's so
And what
true.
you don't know can really hurt you. So, it's not so much about booking with Student Loan Planner as it is about you taking care of yourself and feeling like you're worth investing in. Because the quick story to finish out yet, the most amazing thing that's happened this year, a gentleman called me about 2 weeks ago. He was getting ready to use the proceeds of selling his home to pay off $347,000 of student loan debt.
Oh, wow.
And he booked the call and he was just like, I don't really know. I just want to be done with it. My wife said I should call you. She saw this on the internet. Like he was not like excited. He was like definitely being forced to. Like, I didn't want to spend this money on this consultation, but I'm here. This gentleman had been working at a PSLF employer for 23 years. His loans are immediately eligible for forgiveness. I saved that man $347,000 that he could go retire early. And he was not like, they're not in the best shape for retirement. They weren't, they weren't ready to do everything they need to do financially in life. But they were like, well, this is the next step to financial freedom. Use most of what we just got from our house to pay off student loan debt. And he didn't have to pay a penny of it.
Wow. Yeah, and I think so for everyone, like the consult is usually 5.95 with my my affiliate link discount, you get $100 off. So it's 4.95. And I recognize that that can be a lot for people, to just be
Social
like,
workers' income, right?
I'm paying 4.95 for this, but I think the we're paying for this expertise, we're paying for this clarity, you're paying for this plan. Like you could save so much more than that by booking this consult. So I just want to say that. Last thing, I'm curious about, there's people, I feel like I see people online, sometimes on Reddit, where they're like, don't ever pay for student loan advice. You can do it on your own and this and that. And maybe you don't have a response to that, but I just, from what I've seen, from learning from you guys and the content that you share and everything that we've talked about today, I think it can be worth paying someone who just knows the ins and outs of it and not having to figure it out on your own. And it's not a scam. I feel like there's things I've seen on Reddit too where it's like, if you pay for student loan help, like it's a scam, and just like
And that
this
is
is all
exactly
so
my
confusing.
response. Exactly. Is that there are a lot of scams out there, so you can see where that point of view comes from,
That's
because
fair.
not all companies are created equally. I've had people come and they're like, well, this company told me if I just pay them $200 a month, they would just fix everything for me. And, now they're on a $2,400 for the year. Like I said, this call is $600. It's not cheap. But it's a one-time call, and all we do is try to point you in the right direction. Other people are stringing you along, collecting every dollar that they can. So, I
Yeah.
can see why people have that hesitancy. It's the same thing with financial planners, with accountants.
Yeah.
People would rather try to do it themselves than to be scammed because they don't know, really how to spot the scammer. And so I understand that hesitancy, but at the same time, you need to do a little bit of research. You need to find people that you trust. Like, you've been listening to this podcast, you've been seeing the value from it. You would know that Taylor did some due diligence before she just let anybody come on here and talk to you. Like, you just got to use your noodle a little bit. And, like I said, you can try to do things on your own, but imagine, like, people are trying to cure their cancer on their own. They're Googling things. Like, how much time do you have would be my first question to do whatever it is that you want to do on your own. That's
No,
the
we
reason
don't have we don't have the time, we don't have the energy. And as social workers, we know the value of, if whatever we do, whatever field we're in, whether it be hospital social work, therapy, all the things, we recognize that we have an expertise that we're bringing and the value that we're bringing, and people should pay us for that, right?
Exactly.
And it's the same here. Like, if you need help for student loans, it's okay to pay someone to help you with it. It's worth the investment, and you're worth it. So
Absolutely. If by all means you're like, I can't afford it, like go listen to our podcast, go online, look at our blogs. We have a ton of free
You do.
resources.
You
And
do.
you can build your own plan, but I would say you need to invest at least 20 hours of research time to build one that you're going to feel comfortable with when you could pay for 1 hour of time and move on with your life and keep those 19 hours to do something else.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thanks so much, Lauren. Yeah, can you share like the podcast and the blog and all the places where we can find Student Loan Planner?
Yeah, so we are studentloanplanner.com. The podcast is the Student Loan Planner Podcast. Instagram is Student Loan Planner. You name it, if you just type in the word Student Loan Planner, you should find us in pretty much all realms of social media and in the internet sphere.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. This was so helpful. Thank you, Lauren. Thanks for everyone for listening. Um, as always, rate, review, share all the things, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.